this book. 2,000 some odd years is what we're looking at. All right, so chapter 48. We'll start reading there in verse 1. After this, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," he summoned his strength and he sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me and said to me, 'I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make you a company of peoples and will give this land to your offspring after you, a perpetual holding. Therefore your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are now mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are. As for the offspring born to you after them, they shall be yours. They shall be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. For when I came from Paddan, Rachel, alas, died in the land of Canaan on the way, while there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, Who are these? Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons from whom God has given me here." And they said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he could not see well. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I did not expect to see your face, and here God has let me see your children also." Then Joseph removed them from his father's knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. Joseph took them both, Ephraim, his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right, and he brought them near him. But Israel stretched out his hand, and he laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys, and in them let my name be perpetuated in the name of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, so he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father. Since this one is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He will also become a great people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you, Israel, invoke blessing, saying, God, make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with me and will bring you again to the land of your ancestors. I now give to you 1 portion more than your brothers, the portion that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow." So it's chapter 48. It's another interesting chapter about, there's a few things going on here. The biggest one being the reversal of this whole birthright stuff again. You know, that was a very customary, very traditional thing to do in the time. Would be the firstborn gets the more important blessing, the birthright, and would be the leader of the family moving forward. But Jacob decides to do a little switcheroo here again, and we've seen this before, right? We've seen it before. They seem to have a funny way of switching. The firstborn ain't always he don't always get the inheritance or get the primary inheritance. So it seems like Jacob knows some things, right? It seems like he knows a little more than you get in a text when how he just reverses things at will. I think these guys knew a little more than we give them credit for sometimes. But you just get what the text tells you. Jacob is You know, the storyline does kind of switch back to Jacob at the end of the book here. He's old, he's about to die, so he's blessing these grandkids, and then next chapter he's gonna start talking about his own kids. But he's about to die, so this is kind of father's or grandpa's last words at this point is what's going on. But it says he was old. He was ill. He couldn't see very well. It says his eyes were dim with age. He tells Joseph, he says, therefore your 2 sons who were born in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are now mine. That's interesting. It's interesting. How would y'all react? How would y'all react to a statement like that? Of course, the times are different, right? And there's a reason for doing this. But how would y'all react? You have your kids, you taking them to your father, their grandpa, and he's like, those boys are mine. Probably wouldn't go over very well, but anyhow.
You don't want to go.
Some of y'all try that and see what happens.
Yeah.
He gave them the same inheritance as he did his other sons.
Yeah.
When they divided up the land, Ephraim and Manasseh got the best, but it was no more than, say, Judah or any of the others. In fact, it was better than most.
Yeah.
Manasseh had 2 portions. He had one on one side of the river and one on the other side of the river.
Yep. He does. It was on the map that I put up last week, and we'll bring a map up again in the future too. But yeah, Manasseh had 2 portions, and that's what that's about, right? It says when he's saying they're now mine, right? They shall be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. So he's placing them on an equal status as his own kids with what they're going to get.
Joseph had no inheritance as such.
Yeah, because the 2 boys are getting. Joseph technically gets a double inheritance because his 2 boys are getting equal inheritance, but he doesn't actually get. You don't see the tribe of Joseph. You see the 2 tribes of his kids in the future. But yeah, this once again little switcheroo done by Jacob. To the grandkids. Joseph wasn't happy about it, but it don't sound like he had much of a say in the matter. All right. Anything else y'all want to point out about chapter 48?
Since Joseph was his favorite, I wonder why he took the boys instead of Joseph.
I don't know. You got something, Matthew?
I was going to say, I would like to say Joseph did come along later on that line, but we know that didn't happen.
It was God's plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, Joseph, it's exactly right. He does, God is steering his ship. And we'll see. He even says that at the end of chapter 50. He came a long way. Like Joseph did come a long way in his life. He came from being an arrogant 17-year-old who's just telling his family about these dreams he's having, going and ratting the brothers out to the old man, alienating everybody, to now he was a leader in Egypt, and he literally saved the whole world through God at the time from starving. So he came a long way. He's not perfect, but he came a long way. All right, anything else? 48? We're going to read 49. All right, who wants to read? I'm not reading the next one.
I will.
You going to read it? All right. Thank you, Jimmy.
Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up into your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly. For they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they plead. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. He will tether his donkey to a vine, his colt to the choicest branch. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend towards Sidon. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying down among the sheep pens. When he sees how good is his resting place and how pleasant his land, he will bend his shoulder to the burden and submit to forced labor. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path, that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backward. I look for your deliverance, Lord. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility. But his bow remained steady, his arms stayed limber. Because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God who helps you, because of the Almighty who blesses you, with blessings of the skies above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the beauty of the age-old hills. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each the blessing appropriate to him. Then he gave them these instructions. I'm about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people.
Right. Well, this is an interesting chapter, right? Jacob, he seems to address each one of his own kids directly. And it says, it talks about, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, blessing each one of them with a suitable blessing. I mean, we always think of this blessing as something very positive, but in this situation, he seems to be very prophetic, and he's kind of just telling them what's going to happen or what's coming in their future. Now, Genesis 49, I'm going to tell you right now, we could spend months and go down the line and research each one of these names, and we could look at the history of some of these and talk about what Jacob told them either happened or didn't happen and all that stuff. We're not going to do that. But if you're interested in it, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff and you want to research any of them, there's a lot of information available out there for them. But we're not going to do a history lesson on each one of these folks. We'll hear more about these names as we go forward in the Bible. But you know, he goes down the line. Reuben, right? Reuben was the firstborn, right? Once again, just because you're the firstborn don't mean it doesn't seem to mean a whole lot at this moment in time, because it keeps changing up. But Reuben messed things up, right? Remember we read about how he had somebody in his bed that shouldn't have been in his bed, right? And Jacob reminds him of that. Unstable as water, you shall no longer excel, because you went up to your father's bed and you defiled it. Simeon and Levi, we remember their accounts. How they went in, they tricked it.
They massacred that village.
They tricked them into. I mean, they did wrong, right? They wronged. That group had wronged Dinah, but those two had went in. They told them they needed to get circumcised so they could join up, and while they were all sore recovering, they slaughtered them all. That's what they did. They killed the whole group of people.
They wronged the wrong.
Yeah, they wronged the wrong with a bigger wrong.
But you just wonder how the rest of the brothers what they were thinking when Israel started this. Jacob started this, and Reuben was the first one, and he said, like, you will no longer excel. The other ones are sitting there thinking, this ain't going to turn out good for us.
They're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, this is a blessing. We're in trouble.
Yeah, you know how brothers do. They're probably all mumbling to each other a little bit, but they were probably like, they're probably like, man, don't seem too bad for Judah and Joseph. Why ain't I like them? So Judah, right? Judah. There are some big things mentioned about Judah right here, right? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, right? What is that? What is he talking about there?
Christ.
Yeah.
Prophesying Christ.
Yeah. So what is a scepter?
Authority.
It's this stick of authority.
Yeah, there you go. So these kings and rulers and stuff, they will have this thing called a scepter, right? And that is a symbol of their authority over a group of people. Scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and the obedience of peoples is his. Yeah, this is an interesting statements right here. We make sense out of this because we know the whole story, right? Because we have the New Testament and we can read about Christ and we can trace the lineage and all that stuff. But this is all the way back at towards the very beginning. You think Judah knows what he's talking about? Judah might be thinking on a tribal level. He might. There ain't no telling what he's thinking. The text don't tell us. These guys don't know everything that It's once again it's prophetic, but we can look at Christ and trace it all the way back and say, okay, this is true. The scepter didn't depart. It didn't depart from Judah. Obedience of peoples is his. I mean, Christ. People are gathered. People are gathered to Christ. That the people that Christ gathers should be obedient to him. Like we can make sense out of this statement now. I don't know about back then though. In Genesis, these boys, they're going to get these words right before he dies, and then they're going to have those to work with the rest of their lives and try to figure out what he meant. And then hopefully they're working with God themselves and trying to make sense out of that with God. A lot of these other boys, they just get a short statement. Things like, Gad shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at their heels, right? He's probably like, that doesn't sound fun. But anyhow, you just get a little statement about each of these boys. Joseph gets a pretty good blessing. Not going to read it again because Jimmy already read it to us. But verse 28 says, "These are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them." And then after he got done talking to these boys, right? He dies. he gives him the blessing. He says, take me back to the cave, because he wants to be buried where Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Leah is there too. He wants them to carry him back there to bury him. So it's just he didn't leave anything unsaid. I don't think there's a lesson that we can take out of it, right? We always there's all kinds of stories about like things that we should have said or wanted to say or could have said while somebody was alive. Well, Jacob, he's like, I ain't dying until these boys hear what I got to tell them. So, it's a lesson. Once again, we're tracing the line of Christ. That's another thing that we're doing in this text. And it is illustrated over and over and over again. But just know that all these brothers, they all get their own blessing. They all get their own thing. They get their own. They're going to have their own tribes in Israel in the future, and Christ is going to come from the line of Judah. Anything else about 49? Want to point out anything else? Go ahead.
Dinah was the natural sister of the two who avenged her. In other words, the others wouldn't have had as much. Well, two more would have.
Yeah.
It was their duty, so to speak, to avenge her, and they were the closest kin. So I'm not taking up for them. I'm just saying why they did it.
Yeah. There could be a later on in the text, right? There could be a case to be made for avenging a wrong done to a family member like that in the Bible, not to a whole village, but there could be a case to be made to avenge a wrong like that later. But I don't know about taking out everybody. I don't see that. I don't see that anywhere, not unless God directs it.
There is a case in the Mosaic law where we have the 6 cities of refuge. The law pertains to those. If you can catch the person that did the wrong before they get to a city of refuge, you could kill them under the law.
Yeah. I said there's a case to be made that it could have been okay to do certain things, but we ain't there yet either. That stuff ain't come along yet. Anyhow, yeah, they definitely avenged Dinah and a whole lot more. Anything else? Any other important points that we want to bring out before we read 50? Like I said, we're gonna get them done today. So we're about to move on. All right, chapter 50. Who wants to read chapter 50 for us? It's our last one for today.
Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Jesus directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians mourned him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, "If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear on an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do." So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, and dignitaries of the court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him. It was a very large company. When they reached the threshing floor of Atam, near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly. And there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Achan, they said, "The Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning." That is why that place near the Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephraim and Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt together with his brothers and all of the others who had gone with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When this message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good and accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph stayed in Egypt, along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generations of Ephraim's children. Also the children of Micah, son of Manasseh, was placed at birth on Joseph's knee. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, "God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place." So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in the coffin in Egypt. Oh, that was a long one.
Yeah, you did. You got through it. A lot of this chapter is about honoring somebody's last wishes. There's all kinds of different examples and practical things that we can get out of the text when we're looking at people's lives and stuff like this. But Jacob died. He's pretty important character in the scripture. But he did have a request, right? And that was that he didn't want to be buried in Egypt. He didn't seem to ask these boys for a whole lot, but he didn't want to be buried in Egypt. Now he's dead, right? He's dead. So Joseph could just stay there. He could just say, "All right, we're gonna put him in the ground and move on." But he doesn't. This is a big effort and a big movement to take him back to this cave to honor his last wishes. But the Bible does stress in many different ways throughout the Bible the importance of taking care of your parents and honoring your father and your mother. And this is a good example of somebody honoring their father's last wishes. This once again, this cave that Abraham bought all the way back in the day, right? Abraham, back to chapter 49, verse 31. Abraham's there, Sarah's there, Isaac's there, Rebecca's there. and Leah was there, right? That's a family, it's becoming a family like burial place at the time. But that's where he wanted to go, so that's where they took him there. This time of mourning, right? This is something that we don't see. And the Egyptians wept for him for 70 days. 70 days. Very, very customary, in the time when the important people die, that there will be a lengthy period of time of mourning, weeping, stuff like that. But notice the Egyptians wept for him for 70 days. They're treating this guy like he's a king. And he's Joseph's father, right? Joseph, he was a really important character, but they're under no obligation to treat Jacob like this, but they do. They actually show a little honor on the Egyptian side of things during this time here. His request was to Pharaoh. Joseph's request to Pharaoh: let me go bury my father where he said. Pharaoh says go. Right? It ain't going to stay like that forever in Egypt, where they do kind of negotiate and let things happen. But during this time, says all right. And I'm thinking the thought would have been here like, you've been so good to us. You saved the Egyptians. You saved everybody. You just want to go bury your father. Go on. And he does. And then he comes back, right? But they carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham bought as a burial site. So he made it back. Jacob makes it back to where he wants to go. Remember, Jacob is now known as Israel. I keep referring to him as Jacob to keep things straight in my head, but God did change his identity. How about these brothers? Right? They're not done yet. They're still worried about things. These guys are they're a hoot when you read about them. So they approached Joseph, saying, "Your father gave us this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, I beg you, forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they didn't harm you." You remember Jacob telling them brothers anything about any of that stuff? We just read about them, right? So it sounds like they're just making stuff up again.
They're worried.
They're worried, right? Now the dads died, and they're worried that Joseph is going to hold a grudge. But Joseph don't hold a grudge. He don't hold a grudge at all here.
Joseph understands that was God's plan too.
Yeah, he says it right here. Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to harm me, God intended it for good in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today." Joseph realizes like all this stuff God did for a reason. You got God used this situation, this evil that these brothers did to him to bring about something good. We have other texts that talk about how God will cause different situations to turn into good for those who love him. Right? We have texts like that in the New Testament. But Joseph realizes that God was driving the train on this. "So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones." In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph, he's done. There's no grudge. They're just gonna live. He says, "I myself will provide for you and your little ones." That's a big turn of events for this whole family, right? Now they have some certainty about their future, about their families, about their kids. They ain't gonna be worrying about starving and making ends meet and all that stuff. Because remember, Joseph is like up here in Egypt. Like he's important. He's been an important character for a while. So him telling them this, that would give them some confidence and assurance to go on and live the rest of their lives out. Go ahead, Teresa.
Sometimes I forget that God has foreknowledge.
Yeah.
He knows what's taking place. His thoughts are not my thoughts. His ways are not my ways. And I yet. And I'm impatient, and it is a hindrance to my trust in him. And I have to remember, he has foreknowledge, he's working something much bigger than I can see. And it seems Joseph, all of this has transpired to save his people and work in their lives, even on an individual basis.
Yeah.
So, just a lot to take from this for me.
Yeah. I forget that too. He seemed to just go with it. Every time his situation changed, like he just went with it. Whether he was in prison or to talk, like he just continues on. And he knows that seems to know that God's working, and he knows what's going to happen. Go ahead, Tom.
In Acts 6, verse 8 through 7, Stephen gives a great account of what we just studied from Abraham forward.
Yeah.
And he brings up some things that we didn't study. That, it would certainly be profitable at the end of this study to see Stephen's account.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. There is with a lot of these, there is more information in the New Testament sometimes that you get about these characters. But yeah, that's a good. Stephen does give a good summary of this and a lot more after that. Anything else? Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Go ahead, Martin.
I was just thinking, got Stephen killed, stoned, to tell that story. Because they, whatever reason, there was a real betrayal. The nation had really betrayed him. They didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They just didn't want
Yeah. So next week we're going to review. We're going to do a good review of Genesis, and we might very well read the account in Acts 2. And then we're going to continue on. We're going to continue on with Exodus. It's kind of the plan. So you're ending this. With Israel in Egypt, right? That's how they get there. Like we just read that. So when you pick up the account in Exodus, they've been there for quite a while. But this is how they got there. Was during the famine, and they traveled, and then they set up in Goshen. All right. Anything else?